the children of today and next generation don't have to learn coding.
This has created a lot of noise in the tech circles.
The role of computer science and coding has been so profound in our society.
That can we now really completely depend on AI to give the perfect solution?
How do you decide really, even before getting to an LLM, that GenAI is actually required to solve that problem?
Whether you need that GenAI to solve that particular business use case.
Let me understand from the customer perspective.
And when you're doing in a POC prototyping stage, you may not realize the cost, but
Hey Anirban, how are you?
hey, I'm doing good, Jaydip. How are things going for you?
Things are going great. There are so much happening outside. It seems like it's probably, I cannot actually think of any past anecdote that I can relate to just by simply the speed at which the technology and the business landscape are changing.
Yeah, I know.
And Gen AI and AI is probably at the forefront of leading most of the discussions. So in the corporate
Correct.
America, probably globally in across corporate world today, Gen AI has become one of the most important discussion topic, and the broader
Yes,
AI as well, right? So the importance
that's
of
true.
AI seem to be um, becoming ever increasing now in our life.
Yeah,
All right.
it's
So
true.
I wanted to start off our discussion today with a very striking comment that I saw a couple of weeks back in the media. Uh, the comment was made by Jensen Huang, the CEO and the founder of NVIDIA, and he was attending the World Government Summit in Dubai. Uh, I actually watched that interview, and in that he mentions that the children of today and next generation don't have to learn coding because coding will be taken care by AI, or probably Gen AI more importantly, right?
Right, right.
And it's a big remark, and as we know that even being a parent, a lot of parents aspire their children to learn coding early, get into computer science because the role of computer science and coding has been so profound in our society. um,
Mhm.
how do you see this comment in the light of the overall scheme of things, the rapid development of LLMs and Gen AI? Do you think I just wanted to know your point of view on what's your, how do you see this Jensen Wang's comment?
Sure, sure. Yeah, this was, I think this has created a lot of noise in the tech circles, right? Because see, this coding is not required. This kind of statements have been coming for a long time. Like we started our career long back using VI for Unix and all, right? Then IDs came, and then a lot of, I mean, higher level programming languages came, and now people are using Python and all. Then you have low code, no code, all those things. But the coding thing still remains because there are certain stuff you need to do which you need to know some amount of coding. I also read and the interview script, and what he is saying is basically people can focus on their core expertise, right? If you are a, let's say, scientist or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever it is, you focus on that. You don't have to depend on a either having to know coding yourself or to depend on a developer to do the coding for you. But AI will do everything for you, which is okay. But then the thing is that can we now really completely depend on AI to give the perfect solution? Now, of course, there are a lot of jokes about software engineers that they cannot create a bug-free software as it is, even after understanding, even after so many versions of the software coming in. Even when you see existing software which has been there for 10 years, 15 years, new updates, some new bugs coming. So when the systems become too complex, it is not that the person is not aware of how to do the coding. It's more like for you to know what are the boundaries of the system, what all new, if you're putting in a new feature, what all loopholes you're putting in, what all bugs are there, could be some edge case which you have not considered. So all these things come in. So that's why it is also important for you to know the coding to understand if I am doing it this way or if the AI is doing it this way. Then if you know the coding, you can say, okay, this could probably lead to certain problems. That is one part. Second is also, even now, all this AI, the issues of bias, issues of reliability, hallucination, all those things are there, right? So unless and until everything is sorted out, I think while you may get the first version of the code probably from them, but you still need to know coding to ensure that you do a better job with that first version, first draft, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I would put it. Like in my early days in sales, so I used to, for example, a lot of time write the first draft, look at some past proposals, this, that, and all, and write it. But then when you see the final draft after it has incorporated comments from the other senior folks, so it would be very different. But at least the first draft helped for people to think and quickly collect the full facts and stuff to be put in that proposal. The similar thing I think will happen in case of AI-based code generation, that it can probably work as the first draft, but then you should know on how to modify that, add, delete, etc., to make it uh, better and more usable than the first draft.
Yeah, I think this is probably the story of master and slave, right?
Yeah.
Simply put, in my opinion, in my point of view, it sounds to me like, when we are talking about, going back to his comment that next generation kids probably won't have to learn coding.
Hmm.
He's also saying that next generation, we don't need any manual intervention, uh,
Right.
and we can completely rely on artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think you rightly mentioned that the coding is not just a small piece, right? I mean, if you think the entire in the enterprise context, right, when you're solving a problem, there are multiple aspects uh, in
Hmm.
that chain, right? Uh, there could be several junctures where there are inputs required. There are several junctures where the fine tuning is required, process fine tuning is required. So each of these probably would require unique kind of coding, or understanding, at least as a whole, how the system works when you put together all of that, right? In fact, the
Absolutely.
fact is that, like you mentioned, if you don't know how to write code, probably you will also not know how to evaluate code, right?
Yes.
So that becomes like an impediment for you to be able to sort of further work on any system, right, and improve on it.
Absolutely. Right. And
So,
even things like, so the, like for example, if you look at it, let's say you can use the same programming language, let's say C, for different use cases. You can be writing a very short but crisp code for the engine control unit, or you can be using it to write a huge HR management system software for the same company. Let's say you're doing it at GM or Ford or whichever company. Uh, then the requirements are very different. In a small embedded software, you have to be very careful of how much processing power, how much memory you are spending, right? Whereas in a
mm,
large application, you don't care, right? So those things come in. So then how do you do that? But then in a larger application, a lot of other factors come in. You don't need to bother about memory and performance and all, but then you need to bother about so many other external systems coming to it, and then what are the various business logic, this, that. So the things are very different
that
between the
is
two
true.
types of software.
That is true. And I guess we are still at the beginning of this curve. So we'll also
Right,
have to wait and see how the system matures over probably next few months, not even year now. Um,
right.
and as we know, the space is heating up. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this space, and we'll continue to dialogue, and maybe
Sure,
even keep coming back and evaluating his statement. Right? It's interesting
yeah,
and it's profound, and there's no doubt that there is no substance on what he said. But we'll see how it goes. With that,
sure,
we'll switch to the next segment now, and considering that we are seeing so many versions of the existing LLMs are coming out, um, and it seems with every new version, these providers are kind of taking another leap. Now almost it has become like a triangle to see whether it is Google, whether it is OpenAI, and the latest is, of course, whether it is Anthropic. And not to forget that we also have open sources like Facebook, I mean Meta, and also Mistral, which also offers a OpenAI version, which is kind of slightly toned down model. Now, um, considering there are so many players and the market is only heating up, how does one, from an enterprise perspective, right, or even from a business perspective, how does one go about choosing the right LLM to their business, to their context? Considering all these LLMs are actually claiming to be doing similar use cases, that is one. Second, um, part of that question is that how do you decide really, even before getting to an LLM, that whether GenAI is actually required to solve that problem? Because we need to look at a business first approach before, and not a technology first approach, right? When you talk about solving problems in the enterprise or business side, I just wanted to know what's your point of view on this.
sure, sure. Yeah, that second part, let me address that first. I mean,
Sure.
it is very important for people to know whether you need that GenAI to solve that particular business use case or not, right? Because today, what has happened is there is so much hype about GenAI, and all the leading publications, business or regular media, everything, they're always talking about it. Ministers are talking about it. Government is talking about it. So there is pressure also, right? Whether the CEO or the CIO is saying, okay, when can I start using GenAI? When can I put that in our annual
So
report
when you
and
say
things like
pressure,
that?
you mean GenAI adoption pressure?
GenAI adoption pressure. So when can we announce something? When can we put it on annual report or talk to analysts and say, we are using GenAI in XYZ number of use cases and things like that. But thing is, again, you have to be very sure that you need GenAI. A lot of stuff where maybe even simple coding can help you. There are stuff where even simple statistical methods can give you very good results, simple, elegant ways to do that. And then, so why do you do that? So one must, as you correctly said, look at it from business use case perspective, see what is the output that you're looking for, and then decide if the regular methods won't work. So or rather GenAI may give better results in a more cost-effective way, in a faster way. So then you can go for GenAI. So that should be the way people should approach it, rather than just saying, "Okay, I have this use case. Let's just try using GenAI." When it comes to actually selecting GenAI, so there are two different broad classes you also mentioned. So there are some closed ones, uh, the ones from OpenAI, Google, Anthropic. They are all closed ones. They have done a lot of internal, training the LLM over huge amount of sources and all, and so they probably can give you more rich results when you interact with those LLMs. And then you have some open source ones. Llama, of course, is quite big, but there are also quite other smaller ones, which may not have been trained so much, but they could be relevant only for very specific use cases, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
you could be looking at them. So
Google's Gemini is
again,
also another one, I think, right?
yeah, exactly. So that's where you have to see that if your use case is very, very specific in a short, in very small scope and all, then maybe you in a small, open source one would be useful. You don't need to really go for the large LLMs, right? In terms of, like, say, Open AI's GPT or Google's Gemini, etc. But if that's you're trying to do a very large case and all, when you select, you have to be aware of a few things, right? Which one, the most prominent one is cost. Now, as you know, for example, GPT, they do it based on tokens and all. And when you ask a question, their answers can be very voluminous, right? Sometimes it can be single line, but some other times it can be very, very voluminous. So that way, again, your number of tokens that you use and all, so your costs can go up. So, and when you're doing in a POC prototyping stage, you may not realize the cost, but when you actually put it in a production environment at a larger scale, the cost may suddenly shoot up, and then you might not have realized that it could be so costly. The other part is also you don't know how they will change their pricing, because right now they are more interested in gaining market share, in trying to add more customers to their portfolio. But as we know, GenAI, these LLMs can be very, very resource hungry and so very costly to run. So if they change their cost model later, again your cost can go up. So cost is a very very, very important factor, and then generally the closed ones are costlier than the open source ones for obvious reasons. So you have to see the depth of the use case you have, how intense it is, and then based on that you have to take a call whether the cost can be justified for using a closed system. But again, the thing is that when you use a closed stuff, they give more relevant results. They have less hallucination. So again, uh, the business importance of the use case also, how accurate it has to be from day one, that also is very important, right? So if you are using it for a customer representative use case, right, where the answers are given and the representative is using that, then you cannot have a wrong answer. You cannot have situation like the Air Canada one, where people give a wrong answer and then it goes away. So the relevance also is important. So you have to kind of make a judgment between how do you balance between the two. The third one is a mix of things in terms of one is, do you think that those ones and all today they are there? You don't know, right? Even in case of OpenAI and all, now they have been sued by Elon Musk for not being, completely not for profit and going commercial and things like that. So you don't know. And then, of course, there are stuff that is happening in terms of, are also going on. So, how do you kind of ensure that this LLM will be there? So, again, when you develop, you should have a way to see that you can move from one LLM to another in the way so that it's just not very, very tightly connected to a particular LLM. So I think these are some of the main criteria that you should consider when for.
So, what I'm hearing from you, that basically clearly indicates that you need to factor all of these very carefully based on the business problem, the use case, the context, the cost um, of using that, and what level of accuracy you are looking at in terms of solving that problem, and so on, right? So,
Yes.
help me understand from the customer perspective, right?
Mhm.
Customer perspective, they are looking at basically each of these companies, they are trying to cater to their end customers. They're trying to solve a problem
Mhm.
for their end customers, right? Now, whether it's a healthcare, whether it is financial services, or whether it is retail or e-commerce, they have um, they are essentially trying to solve within their workflow a certain problem. Now when they work with you, when they work with suppression, right? um, in let's say they want to initiate a GenAI project, um, do they need to be specific, or do they need to tell you that this is the LLM that you need to use, or to develop the solution for us, or they can be agnostic to that, as long as their data is in place and quality of data is good, and then you can decide based on the scope. You can basically sort of help them, educate them in terms of the complexity of their use case, what LLM probably will be the right LLM, uh, and why, and the cost part, on the accuracy part, on the complexity part, and so on, right? How do you think
Yeah,
today it is happening, and how do you see this is what really, how does it work for customers?
yeah. So, for the current interactions we're having with our customers in terms of putting LLM based, solutions in the thing. So, in most cases, customers are actually open to, looking at different LLMs, and whichever makes more sense, uh, they would look at using that. So that openness we are seeing. Of course, we also had one case where, excuse me, the customer was very keen that the installation is done on their infra, on their data center, and not on a
Mhm.
public cloud, which ruled out some of these other LLMs. So we had to post.
Mm,
So in
mm.
if choice of LLMs, hard and fast.
So they actually rely on uh, you as an expert to consult on that, give them
Yeah,
the options, tell them the reasons, or
correct.
the pros and cons of choosing, and then eventually decide on.
Yeah,
So that requires obviously some bit of consulting part as well, right?
yeah. So for example, a use case on the contract side, right? And there again, we worked on the AWS platform, and through that, we had access to multiple different LLMs, and we tried and went through the whole process, and then finally selected one which was actually giving the best results, which are actually way ahead of the others that we use. We considered about five different LLMs, and then finally selected one for.
Okay. Does the costing part changes based on which LLM uh, you choose
Yeah,
eventually?
it does because I mean, as I said, the open source ones, so the cost will be much less, right?
Mm,
So that there's no like per token and all. So if you, for example, if I'm going through AWS Bedrock and
mm.
selecting one of the LLMs, so the closed ones will be costlier than the open source ones on Bedrock, right? So cost.
Got it. Got it. This was very helpful, Anirban. I think you demystified a couple of important points, particularly in terms of how to go about choosing what are the criteria that needs to be into consideration for choosing the right LLM. Second is in terms of how each of those areas actually impact the the costing and the other factors
Mhm.
that eventually helps you to make a right decision. And the fact that organizations are in terms of the industry or the specific customers would actually have to sort of um, go through a proper consulting in these areas before they jump into a final selection of LLM or whatnot, right? Good.
Sure.
So thanks for your time today, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future in these lines. To see that how enterprises can drive AI adoption or GenAI adoption, and we'll continue to discuss more use cases like this. Thanks for your time today, Anirban.
Yeah, thanks, Jaydip. I really enjoyed this conversation. Look forward to the next session.
Thank you.